Leveraging Technology in Law Firms Through Automation with Jim Tate, episode 170. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today we have a wonderful, amazing guest. And the reason I'm excited about our guest today is because anytime that we have an opportunity to get somebody who's involved in the legal tech space, providing solutions for law firms with technology, that excites me because that's the future. That's where the legal industry is going. And if you're not rapidly adopting technology into your firm, you're very soon going to become irrelevant. And the biggest challenge that we have is figuring out what technology to adapt, how to adapt it. Let me share an exciting tool that I recently came across that is a game changer for law firms that bill hourly or by the project, otherwise known as flat fee billing. The 2020 Legal Trends Report published by Clio rates how important various items are in a client choosing your firm. You may be surprised to know that the third most important decision factor for someone choosing a lawyer is the ability to pay with a payment plan. The challenge that law firm owners face is the risk of a client not making good on that payment plan. Most attorneys don't offer payment plans because of that. The problem is now solved with LawFunder. LawFunder allows you to easily add a payment option to all your client invoices and retainer replenishment requests that does not require credit checks, applications, or any other complex process. The client's able to use their existing credit cards, allowing them to earn points and miles, access credit card specials on interest rates, and any other tools they use to manage their cash. When I saw this tool, I was blown away. Most importantly, it removes all the risk from the law firm and makes an easy and painless process to the payment process. So if you want to check off the box on one of the top factors in new client decisions, if you want to decrease your accounts receivable and get paid immediately, LawFunder is the solution. Go to lawfunder.com. That's lawfundar.com/profitwithlaw to learn more. And the good news is that we're going to have some conversations around that today. But more importantly, February 9th to 11th, we've got our Law Firm Growth Summit coming up. And the Law Firm Growth Summit is a 3-day virtual event where we're going to be highlighting the different things that you need to do within your firm to position yourself, not just to be successful today or this upcoming year, but to position yourself to be successful and relevant in 5, 10, 15 years from now. The theme of the event is creating a future-proof law firm, future-proofing your law firm. We want to make sure that you are the Netflix of law and not the Blockbuster of law. And that example stems from the fact that Blockbuster was the leader in the movie rental business. And Netflix came along with this idea that we can do mail-in discs where you hold it as long as you want to. You can stream movies online. It was a brand new concept. And when Blockbuster saw that, when the CEO of Blockbuster saw that, he said, hey, this is a great idea. Let me go to the board and say, hey, what do you think about doing something like that for Blockbuster? And he went to the board and he pitched the idea, and the board said, no, we're not doing it because 12 or 13% of our revenue, of our entire revenue comes from late fees. And we would be losing that massive revenue stream if we did that. And to save 12% of the revenue stream, they ignored the future. They ignored the fact that the industry is going to change, and we're blinded to it. And look where we are today. Blockbuster is out of business. They're gone. Netflix is a leader in the entertainment business, streaming, not just streaming, but also creating content. And that's an example we can all relate to because it's in our everyday lives. Legal is the same thing. It's just a number of years later, but the legal industry is undergoing this massive shift, and COVID has accelerated that shift. And somebody on a recent interview said, 2025 came 5 years early in the legal industry. And that's really what happened is basically we've been forced to rapidly change. And now we're left to navigate and try to figure that out. So you don't want to miss this event. We're going to pack it with content that's going to help you understand how to navigate this. So go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com right now, get your tickets. Prices go up every single week. So you want to make sure you grab it when you hear this. I know what it's like. You're on your Peloton, you're out for a run, you're in your shower listening to this. You're like, okay, I got to go and do that. And then you forget about it. So make sure that you remember this time. Go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com, grab your tickets today. I want to introduce you to our guest. Our guest is Jim Tate. Jim Tate is the managing partner of Legal Automation Group. They provide guidance to law firms and corporate legal operations departments so that they can leverage technology more effectively. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you being kind enough with your time, giving us about 60 minutes, or at least giving me 60 minutes. Hopefully we'll keep the interview shorter than that, to share with our audience. And I want to start with an easy one. Everybody wants to know, who are you? Who is this guy, Jim Tate? Give me a little bit of your background. How did you end up at Legal Automation Group? What's your backstory? And what exactly is Legal Automation Group?
Sure. Well, I am a process management guy. My background is in BPM and workflow automation, a lot of the process improvement kinds of activities over a number of decades now. And these have been with various different products, either in solution deployment roles, sales capacities and whatnot, always customer facing. So the discussion should be pretty relevant, hopefully today, about the challenges that typically people have faced. And the legal industry and law firms in general are sort of a step behind in some of these situations. So we're trying to catch them up. And so how Legal Automation Group was formed, we actually spun out of a practice management software providers group, and actually still work with that product. It's called Case One. And within that, we have our sales and implementation teams basically working with that tool and others to help law firms become more effective.
Awesome. So very interesting. And I think, honestly, process management is one of the key things that's going to be a differentiator moving forward. The reason that I think that on the firm side is simply this. The age-old model is to bill by the hour, and that model is being questioned daily. It's something that we question here on the podcast all the time. It's something that was highlighted most recently in the Clio Legal Trends Report of 2020, where they highlighted the fact that the top four concerns, or three of the top four concerns of a consumer looking to retain a lawyer for any type of matter is revolving around price. And the problem with the hourly model is that it's a conflict of interest between the attorney and the client at all stages of the game. And basically, it's in my best interest to take as long as possible to do something because I'm getting paid for it. It's in the client's best interest for you to do it as quickly as possible because they don't want to pay more for it. Also, it leaves the client with all the risk. They're open-ended. They don't know how long it's going to take, how many hours they're going to have to sink into this. They enter into this transaction blind, not knowing what they're going to pay. And the reality is that there are way better ways to do that. And we talk about all kinds of things like flat fee billing and value-based pricing. We also talk about subscription packages, and we also talk about contingency, all of which are working against that hourly model. Now, where process comes in is you have no incentive to streamline the process to make things better when you're billing by the hour. A inefficient firm is a more profitable firm with the hourly model. But if you're willing to recognize that model is not going to work and you need to start positioning yourself for the future, and you're also willing to recognize that the consumer is getting smarter and they're not going to be paying the fees that you're charging in the long run when somebody else can do it far less expensively, that's when you're going to have to start embracing streamlining processes and making things happen more smoothly, more automated. And that's really why I'm excited about this conversation, is because it ties into the entire business model of how legal practices operate. But real quick, before we jump into the process side, Jim, can you just tell me a little bit about case one? Because I've heard of Clio, Practice Panther. My case one is one that I think is not at the top of people's minds when they're looking at practice management software. Where are they based, and what do they do? What's their strong point that that you know of, that why somebody should consider them as opposed to these other platforms that are out there?
Yeah. So I think the main differentiator with the product revolves around workflow, where they have the ability to tailor the product in an extreme manner. All of the intake screens and general, what you're seeing while you're doing all of your work, and the task management side of things is all completely tailorable. It has a workflow engine in it. And again, a lot of this has to do with, is it simple enough for somebody that's a non-developer to create these workflows and change these screens and these kinds of things? And it is. And so where most of the solutions that are out there are pretty fixed in the way that they work generally, and might have some tailorability. This actually has extreme tailorability. You can define each practice area in a unique user experience, and also workflows associated with it. And then from there, it's similar, and it has end-to-end with billing, and a lot of the financials that are necessary, and a portal for the client to access, and so it entices people to work more collaboratively. But that's really, I think, the main differentiators with the product.
Awesome. And I know that we, in the conversation today, we're not going to focus on case one, but that's a good synopsis. And for those of you who are shopping, looking for a solution, definitely go and check that out. But let's talk about process and process automation and stuff like that. Where do we start that conversation? Like, how should a owner of a firm who wants to start streamlining things, where's the starting point for that?
Yeah, so I think you got to kind of break it apart into three different groups. You have your very small firms, the ones that are just have a couple of people in them. And I see them buying practice management systems, and quite frankly, they jump from one to another all the time. They're mainly just trying not to tear their hair out with where do we keep all of the information? Is what cases are we working, and things like that. So process improvement isn't really too much of a focus, or too prevalent there. They're just really, because there's just so few people in the organization. There's not as many handoffs, and they're not really looking at it more or less from an end-to-end perspective. If you're looking at groups that have maybe 10 or more people, which is really, I think, case one's sweet spot, by the way, and where we're probably making most inroads with organizations, they are now becoming more savvy as it relates to, how am I trying to work with my customer? How am I trying to entice my customer to work with me? These kinds of things. I'll get back to that point. So we're seeing more movement in the way that people kind of think about this from a customer experience perspective. And then large firms are looking at really fixing the major problems that are costly, the challenges that exist. They have a lot of the back office technologies in place. They're not going to throw them out. But what they have is a lot of ancillary work processes that just don't work. We're working with a firm right now that is spending over $2.5 million in conflict checking. And in that particular process, if they can streamline that process much more effectively, they can cut $1 million out of their annual spend, really, is what it boils down to. Where that firm then can be billing those hours, because the spend is actually at the senior level. It's the partner level is where the expense is coming in. So they're trying to streamline that process. So
it's not just cutting out $1 million of expenses. It's creating the freedom for that partner to now
billing. Right. Out. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what they're seeing. You're seeing all this time wasted where that should be billable hours.
Yeah, it's a much larger pendulum swing than just that $1 million of expense, which is very interesting. For a lot of listeners, though, $2.5 million of expenses and conflict checks is just like mind-boggling, and and I don't know how many of our listeners are firms of that size, but I do know that we have a lot of listeners who are smaller than that. So if we look at the middle, example, your 10-person firm, where they're starting to figure out how to manage the process, and they're coming from a client-centric customer service point of view. What are you seeing, and from your end, is the important points for customer service? Like, what are customers looking for, and what does a firm need to provide well in order to really become the king of that conversation?
Yeah. So as I said, I think that's really our sweet spot right now on the firm side. And it's starting to look more like, what is the customer experience? Although I don't know that that's something, the jargon that people are using in the legal community right now, but it really is that. So I know you had a previous guest on that was talking about SEO. And so the acquisition, and how do we get more page views, and how do we percolate to the top, this kind of thing. That's great. That's the starting point. But then think about it from that point. What happens once they link to your webpage? What happens there? Now we're starting to see people that are becoming really savvy about, can we use technology to make, first of all, a very elegant experience, make it very, very simple, make it more contemporary for the people that are, younger in the audience, right? So that our customers' demographic is you're looking at more and more technology savvy people that are going to want to kind of use technology to interact with you. So it's the shift towards that is what we're seeing. We have a client right now that is putting together a chatbot that will actually enable them to manage the entire interview process setup before they even schedule a conversation with somebody, and collect the payment for the initial interview all through a chatbot. And then so you can kind of see how that might be very appealing. You link that to your Facebook page or your website or a LinkedIn page where interacting with you is going to be different probably than most other firms that they might be interviewing. And so that's the starting point. And then it becomes, what do we do from the rest of the end-to-end process? And it truly is, how do you work with the intake process? And so you kind of take all of that information. Am I going to ask the same questions over again? No, not if you've collected it in the beginning. That should sort of flow through that customer onboarding process. So all of this is what's really worked.
I want to take a breather for just a moment. Just go back to that website experience, that initial experience that they receive. One of our partners who supported everything that we've done is Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual reception service, but what they've done is they've embraced this technological future, and they do that chatbot AI setup. They actually have, for folks, if you're listening to this and you haven't checked them out, if you go and book a call with them and you sign up with their service, just use our code ProfitLaw100 or tell them you heard about it on the Profit with Law podcast. You'll get a free white glove setup of that chatbot AI, where they're basically going to go through all of those, what that sequence is, and it'll automate the responses until there's a reason that they need to talk to a human being. And then that's staffed by those receptionists at Smith AI. So you don't have to worry about, okay, what happens if somebody does message my site? How do we handle that internally? Because they'll handle that, and they'll follow whatever process you want, and then pass that off to the firm at the point that you determine is where you want to get that, have that handed back to you. And so what's really valuable is having, it's not just your website, it's your Facebook page. It's, people are going to message your Facebook page. People are going to go to your Instagram and send DMs. People are going to go to the different social profiles you have out there, and they're going to try to communicate with your brand that way. I recently saw a news article, literally just a few days ago, Facebook announced that their WhatsApp messaging platform, they've released, or they've been working with enterprise businesses, but now they're talking about releasing this to the consumer or to small businesses, the ability for people to send WhatsApp messages to your business. and to communicate through that channel, which is, I mean, there's millions of people who are using WhatsApp as a messaging platform. So the more that there are these options out there, and the more that people are feeling like naturally like that's how they want to interact, the better positioned you are when you have that available as in your toolbox of accessibility. The other thing is what time of day are they reaching out to you? A lot of people are handling their bills, their legal issues at night, and you're going to be closed. But this, having a chatbot, having a messaging platform that allows them to reach out and get an automated response, or even a managed response if you're using Smith AI, puts you in a better position there. So I think that you have to start looking at putting yourself in your customer's shoes. We recently did an interview with Jim Armstrong from Family of the Accused. So he started a business called Family of the Accused to help people who have a family member that's accused of a crime and help them navigate the legal process. But the entire interview was about his experience when his stepson got arrested for a crime in a different state. So they had to literally go to another state and use, Google to find criminal attorneys, and then narrow it down from there to find the best attorney for their child. And basically, hearing him walk through that process of what it was like really helps you put yourself into your client's shoes and understand what are they going through. Like, you have to really think about what is the emotions they're going through, depending on the kind of law that you're practicing. What is the problem that they have, and how do they feel about it, and how can we best make this a pleasant experience that puts their fears at ease and makes them feel comfortable, because that's what's going to get the client, and that's what's going to make them tell everyone else about you when they experience that, not just in the intake process, but like you say, end to end. You got to provide that experience throughout. And that's why I wanted to highlight that a little bit more, because there are tools available. It's not just something that, some big law firm is spending money to create a chatbot. I mean, you can do it today. Just, go to smith.ai and book a call with them and tell them you heard about it here. Now, intake. You started talking about intake, so let's pick up where we left off. What do we want to think about in the intake process? How can we streamline that to make a stellar customer experience? And then I've got a story to share with you as well, but I want to hear a little bit more.
So I would only just parrot that what you just mentioned about the experience is really going to combat that issue of who costs less or how much this costs. It's a painful process no matter what. When you're in a lawsuit of any kind, whether you're the one suing or you're one being sued, whatever, it's going to be painful. But what can you do with your client to make that experience one where they feel like they're being taken care of? I've been in one, with, too much history, not too much information, right? But the point is that I just wasn't taken care of, and there just was not the level of communication or status of reporting or access to information that I should have been given, these kinds of things. And so throughout this, if you look at it like a customer life cycle from that perspective, it really is a complete full circle loop, to your point, and that then will drive more business. I can get to that a little bit more in a minute. Now, so if you keep that thought in mind, then what you have is, while we're going on this onboarding process, how can we make it very simplistic? How can we make sure we know what it is that we need from them, and make it easy for them to supply the information that we need for them, so that we can be better suited to serve them, right? So is there, in our case, there's a portal that they can upload documents, and they might actually have tasks to do that have links with documents in them that basically enables them to, they have their to-do list, right? And we go back to chatbots. Again, we don't use the Smith AI one, but there's tons of these now, right? And these things tend to make it easy for people to work with you, at least in that initial phase. Once they're onboarded, or as they're being onboarded, you'll see, I go back to conflict check. Even these smaller firms that I was mentioning, the 10 to 50, probably, maybe even 10 to 400 or whatever, 300 or whatever, they still have that same kind of issue where I have a client right now that they're struggling with that exactly. So they needed to have a tool that could help them with the reporting necessary, the knowledge management of this. So this is really all throughout this intake process. It's not only collecting the information, making it easy to collect the information, but what happens in the back office? How are we collaborating so that it's not taking our entire day to onboard this client, and we make sure that we can serve this client properly?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to go back and just pick at for a moment. One is that you use the example of everybody, a lot of people go through a lawsuit, and a lawsuit is, it's not an easy process. But I
Mhm.
want to say, even our transactional attorneys, if you're doing bankruptcy, you're doing real estate, you're doing a high volume transactional business, customer service makes a big difference there. And it doesn't cost you a lot to provide that experience, right? It doesn't, once you have certain pieces of technology implemented and you have a system worked out, you can lead somebody through a process where they feel like they're being taken care of, and it doesn't require you, going and having coffee with them, and
Mhm.
then finding out about their kids' soccer game and calling them to see how the soccer game went.
Right.
We're talking about sending them an automated email right after they become a client
Right.
that says, "Hey, we're so excited to have you on board. Here's what to expect," and laying out
Mhm.
what to expect, and
Right.
then sticking to the things that you said you're going to do. So if you said, "Hey, within the next 24 hours, you're going to get an email from us that's going to outline X, Y, Z," make sure that that email is going out to them within 24 hours. So when they see that level of communication, the touch points, the more touch points that you have, the more touchy feely somebody gets. And that's gonna really increase the experience. And it's not just email. There's so many modes of communication that we have. You can send them an automated text message. You can send them, you can call them with an automated voicemail without getting them upset, because you could just say at the beginning,
let me share an exciting tool that I recently came across that is a game changer for law firms that bill hourly or by the project, otherwise known as flat fee billing. The 2020 Legal Trends Report published by Clio rates how important various items are in a client choosing your firm. You may be surprised to know that the third most important decision factor for someone choosing a lawyer is the ability to pay with a payment plan. The challenge that law firm owners face is the risk of a client not making good on that payment plan. Most attorneys don't offer payment plans because of that. The problem is now solved with LawFunder. LawFunder allows you to easily add a payment option to all your client invoices and retainer replenishment requests that does not require credit checks, applications, or any other complex process. The client's able to use their existing credit cards, allowing them to earn points and miles, access credit card specials on interest rates, and any other tools they use to manage their cash. When I saw this tool, I was blown away. Most importantly, it removes all the risk from the law firm and makes an easy and painless process to the payment process. So if you want to check off the box on one of the top factors in new client decisions, if you want to decrease your accounts receivable and get paid immediately, LawFunder is the solution. Go to lawfunder.com. That's lawfundar.com/profitwithlaw to learn more.
look, we're really busy handling our clients, which is exactly what we're going to do for you. But I recorded this message to send to you because I want you to know you're in good hands. I want you to know that if you need to reach me for whatever reason, you can reach out to this and this number, this and this email address, and you will get a response within X amount of time. You just lay the groundwork for them, and then people don't get upset that you don't have the time to pick up the phone, call me, you sent me an automated message. Instead, it's like, wow, they want to make sure that I hear this message. So you really have to think outside of the box of how can I use technology to automate the process of making somebody feel really good. The story I wanted to share with you before is I hired an attorney to do my trademark for my brand. And we hired Indie Law, Joey Vitale. He was a podcast guest here on the show. But after I hired them for our first one, and it's then turned into repeat business, right? We've done multiple trademarks with them. But after we hired them for our first one, I received a package in the mail just two days later, and it was fulfilled through one of these fulfillment companies. It's not like they're doing anything. They created this process, and I have no idea what they spend on it, but probably cost them less than $50 to do. And I got this package that was basically welcome to the Indie Law family, and it had I don't remember exactly what it had in it, but I remember it had a little cactus and there was a message in it that had something to do with why that was there. There was confetti in it. There was a few things that was like it was just very customized to their brand and saying, hey, we're excited to have you on board. Getting that really, when somebody decides to choose you as their law firm, the first thing that they have is buyer's remorse. The same thing, like if you drive a car off the lot, you're like, oh man, did I make the right decision? Was this the right vehicle? Buyer's remorse is natural. It's the first thing that happens whenever you spend a decent amount of money on something. So somebody's got buyer's remorse. Your job is to get them out of buyer's remorse as fast as possible. How do you do that? You do that by over communicating with them at the beginning. You do that by sending them a package or something that says, hey, welcome to the family. That receiving that package, it had nothing to do with law, but I knew I was in good hands. I knew I was with a company that cared about me, or at least that's what it made me feel, right? So the bottom line is that you have these little things that you can do, that you can automate, that you can put processes around that will enhance the customer experience and will make your customers feel better. And that's what it's all about. It's not necessarily, am I the best lawyer? As unfortunately, some of you are like, well, what do you mean? Of course, it's got to be I have to be the best attorney. No, it's the best marketer. It's the person who understands how to make people feel good that wins in this game of business, which is, guess what? That's what you have when you're a law firm owner. So you really need to figure this out. You need to understand how to create this stellar customer experience. So love what you outlined with the intake process. And if you just marry them together and automate this all within the software, you can do this across the board and have this unified experience where everybody walks out of this assembly line that you're providing, having experienced the same thing.
Those are great insights. And actually, I look at it like I call them touch points. So you're talking about one touch point, which is the initial process of thanking them for becoming a customer. It doesn't stop there. I think maybe it's not as not so much of a large exchange per se, but if you break down the work process from end to end for each practice area of your firm, you can figure out, one, what are these activities and how can we put our best foot forward every single time when we're interacting with a customer? Did we think through the process in that way, coming from that perspective, the customer experience perspective? And I'll tell you, all of these things is exactly what you just mentioned. It's all about marketing. You're marketing yourself at every single touch point throughout the process. You might have a relationship with them for multiple years on a single matter. So how does that happen? Okay, so we've gotten past intake, and I'll tell you that the systems that we work with can automate both of those processes that you mentioned. All of the email notifications with the to-do steps, that just becomes one of the things that, based on practice area, it sends all of this information out, for them to start working, and gives them access to the portal and these kinds of things, right? And then your gift is a task for somebody that has that there, that ships it off to them, right? So really pretty simplistic kinds of things, but great forward thinking. It doesn't stop there. Then you get into, as we're managing the matter itself, are we managing these work steps in such a way that we know that nothing's falling through the cracks? We know that we're providing these periodic updates, and we're making sure that people can access this information from a portal or some site somewhere, that they're keeping abreast of what's going on in the matter. Spend becomes an issue. There's also the requirement for, if this is a firm to corporate customer, spend analysis and understanding how that all works is a big differentiator for firms right now too. So all of these kinds of interactions are important as you're kind of working with them on a day-to-day basis. And people want to be able to have this information ready to hand, stored in a centralized place, have knowledge management for the purposes of making sure that they're providing everything that they can for these clients.
So, Jim, my question is, I've been on a lot of portals, I've experienced the interaction within the portal, and the problem with portals is that the information is only as good as the inputs, right? So if nothing has changed and it's just a matter of providing an update, it's not something I can log into my portal and I can see that, where it's at, because nothing has changed, right? And then if something has changed, it would require the firm to update it in the right place for me to be able to see that on my own without needing to be communicated with. Is there any specific tips, tricks that you can provide to our law firm owners of what they might do internally to create these systems and processes that's going to ensure that the right inputs are being put in, so that the triggers are hit, so that the client's communicated with? Because sometimes it's just, hey, we've got all this automation in there, we've got the portal in there, but if nobody's updating this field, then it's not triggering the email to go out, and the client never hears from us.
Yeah, so I think I should probably start by saying we're becoming a more collaborative society. So people are becoming used to having these, a technology interface for working together in some way. And COVID has actually been one thing that's even promoted that even further. So there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. I mentioned just a minute ago, having everything centralized. And so you can set up a portal where they have view access rights to certain things that they're able to see. And then there are ways to communicate with them in a collaborative fashion right within the portal itself, a threaded discussion mechanism against a particular task that they might be required to manage. And the notifications provided there. We're getting away more from email, only because although that's great in some ways, and you can email out of a lot of these practice systems, as much as you can have them collaborate on the portal, then it's sort of like they become part of the staff. You're working the matter together, as opposed to you got to stay the client and I got to stay the attorney, and I'm not going to show you this or tell you that, and we're just going to work on your behalf, and don't bother us. I mean, this is how my attorney took care of me, which again, I had a really bad experience. So, but and I'm not saying your listeners are like that, but I just say that what they need to kind of consider is, how can we just kind of make them part of the getting to the goal we're trying to, and
Right.
that if that's the case, then this kind of gets back into that user experience perspective that I was mentioning before, that folks are now gonna they're gonna see that everybody's kind of working towards the common goal, and boy, that's a heck of a lot better experience than the unknown, and you're trying to chase your attorney around. That's just not the right experience. And all of this kind of leads into, you're going to get customer referrals. You're going to get ways that people are going to want to promote this. This is a growth mechanism for the long haul for firms of this small to medium sized element or area. They're gonna see that people are going to really be willing to be a proponent of the company or the firm, and the growth will be exponential.
Yeah, I love that concept of just collaborating together to get as a means to an end, and to be able to resolve this issue, rather than it being, okay, here's the things I need you to do as a client. Oh, have you done them yet? Have you done them yet? And don't worry, I'm working on it on the back end, and really having no visibility as to what is it exactly the attorney is doing. I mean, that's why so many firms spend so much time in the invoicing process, right? Going back to this hourly billing model, and when invoices are generated, there's so many firms that the invoice generation and billing process is like a 2-day experience every month, because they first generate the bills, then they review it to see, hey, is this realistic? Does this look good? Am I afraid that the client's going to call me out on some stuff? Do I need to adjust time? And they start adjusting time there, and removing some time from billing the client for it. Then the client receives the bill, and the client's surprised. A month's gone by, I haven't heard from you, and you're sending me a bill that you worked on my thing for 100 hours. What'd you do? And that's that's part of why I hate that model. But it's also it goes back to this conversation, which is, don't work in a vacuum and then come to the end of the month and say, hey, here, client, here's your bill. And it's a surprise to them. That's an awful place to be from a customer service perspective. Instead, give them updates as you're doing this work, saying, hey, we did this and this. We have to do research on this particular thing. We got to find case law that's going to back this up. That might take us a few hours, but we're working on it. And then because as they get those updates, they know you're working on it. You're working on it. Like I feel throughout the month, you've done something for me.
Yeah. Think of the money saved by not having to give back or take out the hours that you were just mentioning. I mean, if they understand and they're in the game with you, or they're rowing towards the end goal here, you're just not going to have that many disputes. They're going to understand that your work effort is there, and you're not going to have a whole bunch of contested invoices. It just won't be the case. I think a lot of these things become strategic and kind of going full circle into this, and that is that automation as an underlying factor becomes the vehicle for change, and then a rethinking of the entire organization, the entire firm from end to end, the whole start. And that's what we do at Legal Automation Group. We help people kind of get back to square one and say, listen, you've been doing it that way for a long time. And, I'll get into the challenges here in a minute of why this sometimes doesn't work. But if you kind of step back and say, listen, we need to rethink ourselves, and how can we leverage automation as this platform for being able to transform? It's very powerful, and it gets really people to a different, as I said, experience.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Do I do the automation and through that recreate my processes, or do I recreate my processes, get that working right, and then automate it, right? And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. I think that when you're tasked with something specific to do, it's easier to put your mind into it and get it done, which lends to, hey, let's automate this. Oh, how do we do that? Well, we got to map out what we're going to do. So what's step one, what's step two, what's step three? And that's kind of how we create it. But we need to be careful not to automate a bad process, right? And that's, a lot of people's.
Let me stop you because again, you're talking to a BPM guy, right? So the age-old thing is, let's analyze our work processes, and we'll spend all of this time mapping them out, and all of this. There's a very inordinate amount of time thinking, and that's great, and that's kind of how it started out. If you think about process reengineering, way back when I was even a kid, that was kind of what everybody did. And they thought, wow, we're really making some headway. Look, what we could have our processes be this, right? And that we will be so much more efficient. And so I'm not going to say that you're wrong, but I'll just say that given the way that technology has evolved, it is now one and the same. So if you take Case One's platform, for instance, you can automate your workflow within a matter of minutes. You can modify your workflow within a matter of seconds. You can adjust these things on a continuous basis based on best practices as your firm evolves. And so what once was, we need to figure all this stuff out and then hand it over to developers, not the case anymore. A non-developer like myself swims in this process, that we can I can create anything in that tool. I can teach the client to be able to do the same thing. They don't have to have a developer in-house. So it's become different in the sense that let's not only look about what's working today and what's the customer experience and collaboration that we're trying to achieve initially here. It's a good thing to kind of get that out and get that out quickly, but then begin to automate them and then modify these work processes as you work through them, and you can refine them on a continuous basis. That's the new paradigm. That's right. What the next generation technologies that are out there can support that.
Right. Jim, I love that, because I tell my clients all the time, action creates clarity. So many firm owners sit in this point of indecision. I don't know if I should take this next step. And they worry about the what ifs and what if I do it, what's going to happen? What if it doesn't work? And if you had just done it within a matter of days or months, you would have the feedback to know whether it worked or didn't work. And then when you find out, you can then tweak it, and you can change and you can make it better. So I like the way that you're outlining this, because it's exactly what you're doing. This action creates clarity idea in this tool where, hey, let's automate our process the way it is. And then because it's so easy to do, and then let's start making tweaks, and we just act as a scientist, put our scientist hat on and say, okay, what happens if we do this? Does that make things better or worse? Oh, it made it worse. Let's switch it back. What happens if we do this? Does it make it better or worse? And then switch it back, or keep it that way. So I really like that concept of, hey, let's just go. Let's just take action. Let's just do this.
And it's a continuous process improvement kind of. The firm's mentality changes into that way of thinking, as opposed to we've done it this way since we started the firm, and it's so tough to change. And so if we shift into what are the challenges, that's really our biggest challenge in most cases. I wrote an insights paper that talks about the 7 common challenges for not achieving automation success, or something to that. And the first thing that we see is people that are just adverse to change. And so they can't really justify rethinking their processes or adding technology, because they're just so stuck in the way that they've been doing it all the time. And it's probably the number one thing that prevents me from building a customer relationship. And then from there,
I know, Jim, I know an attorney in Manhattan that I met with, I consulted with, I gave them a proposal to work with them, but they never did anything. They actually are still working without computers in the office. And
you'd be surprised they're not alone. There's so many people that aren't, even sizable firms. I mean, there's amazing amounts of people that are managing spreadsheets and emails and things like that. It's mind-boggling to me, but that's true.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to think about, because there's so much more efficiency that can be had using technology, and there's so much you can be so much more relevant and so much better at what you do, serve so many more people. But some people are just content with where they are, and you know what? They're not the ones listening to this podcast. They're not the ones who are going to be your client. The first step to becoming better is to recognize that where you are now, if you stay there, you're stagnant, and stagnancy means you're drifting, you're treading water. Eventually you're going to get tired. Eventually you're going to go, you have to, we live in a fluid world. Everything changes. We have seasons, so you're never going to stay exactly where you are. So if you're staying exactly where you are, you're either going to move up or down, just naturally. And usually if you're not making improvements for the better, it's going to be down. So if you want to be relevant 5-10 years from now, you have to embrace change. You have to see that. You have to recognize that. Now, Jim, as we're nearing the end of our time together, and this has been a great conversation. Time flies when you're having fun, because I didn't realize how far along we were in the hour here. But I want to circle back around and just ask you, is there, one parting piece of wisdom that you can share with our listeners if they're trying to figure out, do I navigate this process? How do I navigate this process? Where do I get started? Or what is the one thing I should be careful about? Something that you can leave somebody who's kind of contemplating, chewing on what we've discussed today, as far as something that they can use to help move them in the right direction.
Well, not trying to sound self-serving. I think what we see
I think
most
it should sound self-serving. I think that's why you're here.
What we see most commonly is that people, law firms don't recognize the value in resources like Legal Automation Group. And so countless times people have put in Clio, Practice Panther, you name it, right? And they've gotten no consulting help in putting that in. They had nobody thinking with them, including the vendors who provide a few hours of training, and then they plug in a tool and they use it to a very small fraction of its capabilities. Nothing wrong with those products, by the way. We just like the Case One product because of its flexibility and workflow capabilities. But the point is that time and time again, people underutilize. It's kind of funny because they're in the business of selling services, so they're billing for hours for really consult. They're consulting. Attorneys are consulting, right? And yet there's a huge reluctance to invest in kind of shaping their business and thinking through their work. So again, obviously I'm self-promoting, but I'll tell you that 9 times out of 10, the success of your automation product revolves around, has it been well thought through, and how can your staff consume this in a meaningful way so that they get the most out of it. 9 times out of 10, it's not successful. So take a step back, invest in thinking through this. There's a lot of different technologies out there that can be blended together to do incredible things. Resources, the firms don't have those resources. They don't know all of these technologies. They can listen to these podcasts and things like that, but they really need to have advice, somebody that's there like they are. The customer experience for us is all about, how do we help you morph your company, transform your company into something that's truly more effective. And so that, I know it's, again, self-serving, but that's really what I see.
Right. And I really don't think it's self-serving. I think it's a really good message to promote here at the end, because I coach law firm owners, and there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are on my email list, a lot of people who listen to this podcast. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a very small percentage of those people that actually pay dollars to spend time with me to improve their situation. And that comes from very simply either not having the resources to do it, which is one problem, but the more common one is not seeing the value in getting that outside help. And I absolutely agree with you. I think that more and more law firm owners need to embrace that, need to recognize that it is a great investment to invest in somebody else helping you navigate the technological change, helping you navigate how to manage your business, helping you navigate. There's a lot of things that you can just pay for help and not have to go it alone. And when you pay for that help, what you are doing is you're accelerating your success. So yes, you can do it yourself, but is this the best use of your time? Is futzing around with technology for 12 months to figure out how to get everything to work together the best way to get your business moving forward? Or is bringing in a consultant who's going to help you navigate that process and do everything for you? And 6 weeks later, you've got, and I just made up that time frame, but 6 weeks later, you've got everything done and you're not wasting 12 months on it. Now you're using this technology and you're bettering your situation that much earlier. You have to start thinking this way. You got to start looking at it, being willing to invest in yourself. One of the best ways that I help my clients understand how to position this is figure out where you want to be 12 months from now. And then just imagine you're in that situation. So if 12 months from now, you're at 500,000 in revenue, 12 months from now, you want to be tracking $1 million in revenue, right? What did you have to do when you're at $1 million in revenue? Looking back, what did you have to do to bring in clients? What did you have to do to process the work that's coming through? What did you have to do from a staffing perspective? If you start to think about, if I had this business already, what would my firm look like? And you work backwards, chances are you would see that this is what you needed to do. So you got to really think that way. You got to start putting yourself in the future, looking back and seeing what you had to do, and then take those steps. Because usually, if you're looking at that shorter time frame, you're investing in yourself in these various ways. Jim, we're gonna wrap up. It's been a great conversation. I know that you have something to share with my listeners that they can download. So if you can give us the details of that, and then I just want to thank you, and we'll sign off.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And actually, all I have is, if there was an interest in learning more about some of the challenges, there was a document that I put together on our website. You can simply type in LAGL, LAGL-insights, and it should come up in your browser, linking you to Legal Automation Group's page there that kind of talks about what we talked about today, and the inherent challenges that firms face in implementing their automation initiatives. So it's a pretty good read, a pretty simple read. We'd love to help anybody that is interested, and there's a whole lot of other areas that we can provide value.
Awesome. So we're going to link that up in the show notes. So folks, if you look in the description of the podcast, it'll be linked there. If you go to the website, profitwithlaw.com/number of episode. I don't know what number the episode this will be, but let's say it's 180, then /180. You would use that number and that would take you to the show notes page. All of the things we mentioned, the various podcast episodes that I've recorded in the past that I've mentioned throughout this recording, as well as the resource that Jim has shared, all of that will be linked up in the resources section of the show notes page. And Jim, I want to thank you again for being here. This has been a great conversation. I think that there's so much work ahead of us in this regard. And I think we're just getting to the tip of the iceberg. We're not even hitting the tip of the iceberg here. And, I think we've got a long road ahead of us. That's going to be great. I mean, I think it's going to be impactful. I think the industry is going to improve. And I think that more and more firms are going to adopt it, which is going to further that conversation. So folks, as we round up here, a couple of things. First of all, if you enjoy the show and you're not yet a subscriber, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player. What that's going to do is it's going to let you know every time we release a new episode. We're releasing 2 episodes a week. So we want to be in your ears. I want to be in your ears. Jim might want to be in your ears.
Absolutely.
It's going to be this hour, but we'll try to get him back for another conversation at some point. But I'd love to be in your ears over and over again. We have a ton of great information, great guests like Jim, as well as solo episodes I do myself. And I'd love to have these conversations with you, even if it's one-sided, but it's not. My email address, mamsel@dreambuilderfinancial.com. It's in the resources section in the show notes of every single episode. Email me, send me, let's have a conversation, have a dialogue around one of these topics. So hit the subscribe button. And also, if you haven't yet signed up for the Law Firm Growth Summit, now's a chance to do so. Go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. We'd love to see you for 3 days in this virtual environment. We're going to try to create an in-person conference feel in this virtual setting. So if nothing else, come and join us so that you can come back and say, hey, you did a good job or you didn't do a good job. But tickets are not that expensive. They're, right now, at the time I'm recording this, the cheapest ticket is less than $100. The prices go up every week, so I don't know when this was going to be released. It could be that I'm throwing myself under the bus because it's more than 100 at this point. But regardless, it's well worth every penny. Love to see you there. Go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. Jim, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And folks, I can't wait to see you on our next episode.
Thank you for tuning into the Profit with Law podcast. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us, as well as helping us reach more people with this valuable content. Please leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast directory. Join us again next time when we are back with even more strategies to profit with law.